You are here now, and that is enough. The day behind you grows quieter with every breath, like footsteps retreating down a hallway of memory. There is no need to chase them. The past does not require your attention, and the future can wait patiently outside. For now, you exist only in this moment. Inhale gently. Exhale slower. Let your shoulders sink a little deeper. The room around you softens and the shadows begin to stretch longer, slower, like warm ribbon across a worn floor. You feel the weight of your own body. Not heavy, not burdensome, but grounded, like a candle resting in a brass holder, waiting to be lit. The flickering light of thought grows quieter too. What lingers is warmth and stillness and the sound of your own quiet presence. You are safe here, and soon you will drift. But first, a story. It is not a loud story. It does not begin with thunder or end in fire. It begins with wax and flame and hands stained with beeswax and time. It is the story of someone who lives by light, but not sunlight, not starlight. You live by the light you craft yourself, drop by drop, wick by wick. You are a candle maker in Paris, and the year is 1788. The city is alive, bustling and uneven, noble and poor, rotting and divine. There are whispers of revolution, yes, but they are distant and muffled, like the sound of wheels on stone far down the street. Your world is smaller, quieter. It smells of melting wax, ash, honey, and the river wine that creeps through narrow alleys at dawn. You live above your workshop in a cramped room with one crooked window and 2 chairs, though you rarely sit. You rise early. You stir the pot. You wrap the wick. You pour. You wait. You shape. And when the candles are cool and firm and ready to glow, you wrap them in old paper and carry them into the waking streets. And in that rhythm, there is something sacred. This is your story. A slow one. A quiet one, the kind that glows gently in the dark. And before we begin, a small thought drifts into this quiet, a whisper, if you will. If you like, leave a trace of yourself in the world. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it now in the place you rest? It's soothing to imagine all the corners of the earth tied together by this single, gentle moment. Now, let us return to that little room in Paris. You are there, and the wax is warm, and your hands know exactly what to do. The day begins before the sun speaks. You do not need the light to wake. Your body has learned the rhythm of morning, the way bees learn the shape of flowers, by repetition, by memory, by a kind of quiet reverence. You open your eyes to the dim room that breathes with old wood and smoke-stained walls, the scent of beeswax still lingering from the day before. The bed creaks beneath you as you rise, not abruptly, not slowly, just in the way one must, when the day does not wait and the work is patient but firm. You touch the floor with your bare feet. It is cold stone, smooth in some places, chipped in others. You stretch, you roll your neck. You do not speak. There is no one to speak to. The room is just wide enough for your bed, a table, a small stove, and a narrow shelf of tools. A single window faces east, but the light will not reach it for hours. Still, you move with certainty. Your hands know what to do. Down the stairs, the air thickens with the scent of your trade. The workshop is warmer than the room above, having held the breath of yesterday's heat through the night. The smell of melted wax clings to the walls, a blend of honey and tallow, of fire and resin, of patience-made material. You inhale deeply, and it fills your chest like memory. You light a single oil lamp, the wick slow to catch, reluctant in the chilled air. The room responds to the flame. Shadows soften, corners return. The copper pots catch the light and reflect it dully, like sleepy eyes. There is no noise from the street yet. Paris still dreams above your ceiling. But in this room, the day has already begun. You begin with the wax. Blocks of it sit on the shelf, wrapped in cloth and aged by time. You unwrap one gently, fingers tracing the uneven ridges. It is firm and slightly dusty, but clean. A pale gold, like frozen sunlight. You break it apart with practiced force. 2 hands, a measured snap, a motion you've done 1,000 times before. Into the pot it goes, chunk after chunk, until the pot is 3/4 full. You place it over the stove and light the flame. As it melts, you prepare the molds. Simple metal cylinders, slightly battered but still loyal. You clean them one by one using a cloth dampened with warm water and vinegar. Not because they are dirty, but because you always do. The cloth whispers against the metal, a soft rhythm beneath the ticking of the cooling pot and the low gurgle of the flame. Once the wax begins to melt, the smell deepens. It is thicker now, sweeter, rounder, as though the room itself is exhaling. You stir it gently with a wooden spoon, watching the hard edges surrender into liquid. The surface ripples like glass stirred by wind. You do not hurry. Wax resists haste. It melts in its own time, and you've learned to follow that time rather than push it forward. There is peace in that surrender. You measure the wicks. Cotton, finely braided, cut to length with shears dulled by age. Each one is dipped first in wax and set to dry, an extra step, unnecessary to some, but essential to you. The waxed wick stands straighter, burns cleaner. It is a small kindness to the candle and to the hand that will someday light it. You thread the wicks through the molds and secure them in place. This part always feels delicate, like setting bones. Too loose, and the wick will bend. Too tight, and it will snap. But your hands are steady. You've done this for too long not to know their needs. You speak to the wicks without words, offering balance, tension, trust. Now comes the pouring. The wax is ready, shimmering gold, clear and smooth. You lift the pot with a cloth-wrapped hand and begin to pour, slowly, evenly, with a stillness in your shoulders. The stream of wax flows like syrup, like sunlight stretched into silence. It fills the molds, rising inch by inch until each one is full. There is a soft hiss as air escapes. A few bubbles rise and pop. The scent blooms. You place the molds on the drying shelf and wipe the edge of the pot. Your fingers are dotted with wax, already cooling into translucent skins. You do not brush them away. You wait. You breathe. You listen. Outside, Paris begins to stir. A cart clatters somewhere in the distance. A dog barks. A man clears his throat in the street below. The world is waking, but it still feels far away. In this room, time moves differently. Not slower, exactly, just deeper. It pools around you like warm wax, softening the edges of everything. You sit for a moment on the stool beside the workbench. Your hands rest on your knees. Your apron is already stained for the day. You look around the room, not to check, not to judge, but simply to see. The shelves are lined with your work. Candles in bundles, candles in jars, candles wrapped in brown paper, labeled in your careful script. Some are tall and thin, others short and wide, some made with herbs or oils, most are plain. You've never liked selling candles as fashion. To you, a candle is an offering, not a decoration. A flame should not perform, it should comfort. You rise again. The drying candles need time. You prepare another batch. The process repeats. Wax, wick, mold, pour. There is no hurry. You are not chasing profit. You are keeping rhythm. By mid-morning, the workshop is warm and alive with scent and texture. You crack the door open to let in a bit of fresh air. The street outside is narrow and lined with stone. You hear the voices of women walking to the market, the distant clink of bottles, the occasional shout of a vendor. But you do not step outside, not yet. The candles are not ready. You pour yourself a small cup of water and drink it slowly. The cup is chipped. You've had it since before you opened the shop. You think about replacing it often, but every time you look at new cups in the market, they seem too perfect. This one, at least, remembers your hand. There is no clock in the room, but you know the time by the shadows. They have begun to shift, angling toward the right side of the doorframe. The sun must be climbing now, stretching into the narrow spaces of the city. Paris is unfolding above you, rooftop by rooftop, window by window, breath by breath. But here in your workshop, the light stays low and soft. You prefer it that way. You check the molds again. The wax is cooling, turning opaque. You test one gently, still warm, but firming at the edges. Another hour, perhaps, then they'll be ready to remove. You make a note in the small book near your bench. Today's batch, the weight of wax used, the wick type, a small drawing of the sun, just for you. You don't know why you mark the sun. You've been doing it for years. Every good day gets a sun. It's never been a system, only a feeling. You sit again. Outside, the sounds grow louder. You will walk the streets soon, delivering your light to the corners of the city. But not yet. For now, you sit with your morning. The warmth of wax, the silence of the room, and the knowledge that you have made something good, something gentle, something that will carry light into the dark. The candles cool while you wait. You do not pace. You do not fidget. You simply breathe and let the room settle around you like morning mist. The pot of wax on the stove is empty now, save for the faint golden sheen along its curved bottom. A trace of heat still lingers on the metal, soft and quiet, like a memory that doesn't ask to be remembered but stays just the same. You sit near the window for a moment, though the light has not yet fully entered. You enjoy the cool pain against your hand. It is not a fine view, just the side of the building opposite, dark stone and iron balconies, but it reminds you where you are, in this city, in this moment, in a room above a workshop that smells like honey and smoke. The scent clings to everything. It lives in the boards beneath your feet, in the threads of your apron, in the cracks between windowsill and wall. It is not unpleasant. Quite the opposite. It is comforting, like a second skin you didn't know you needed. Sometimes you catch it in the folds of your coat as you walk through the market and you think, yes, this is mine. Not the coat, not the scent, but the life it carries with it. The hours, the work, the quiet labor of light. The beeswax, when it melts, carries the aroma of wildflowers and hives. Even though you buy it from the market near the Seine, wrapped in burlap and thick with dust, the scent remains. It always surprises you how something so industrial, melted, filtered, poured can still hold the echo of sunlight and clover fields. Sometimes, if you close your eyes while it softens in the pot, you can imagine the bees themselves, wings flickering like thoughts, moving among lavender and white heather. You've never seen a hive up close, but you've read of them in books borrowed and returned to stalls near the university. Ordered, humming societies. A city inside a city. It makes you smile to think of it. How the wax passes from one set of quiet hands to another. The smoke comes later, when the candles are lit. Not your smoke, not yet, but the smoke of futures waiting to happen. A candle burning in a chapel corner during a silent prayer. A flame flickering beside a child's bed, chasing the night from the corners. A cluster of warm tapers on a table during a meal where no one says much, but everyone understands something soft. You think of all the places your candles might live. You do not imagine palaces. You do not imagine salons. You imagine kitchens and bedrooms, forgotten hallways and dusty stairwells. Places with chipped bowls and old shoes tucked beneath benches. Places where the light is not a decoration but a necessity. The glow that makes things visible without making them harsh. You glance at the molds, still cooling. The wax has grown pale now, creamy and solid near the surface. You run a finger lightly along the edge of one, checking its give. Almost ready. The room holds its breath with you. You decide to make tea. There is a small copper kettle near the stove, blackened with use, but reliable. You fill it with water from the jug and place it on the flame. It hisses quietly, almost whispering. You pull down a tin of dried herbs, nothing fancy, just peppermint and thyme from the old woman near the bakery. She sells them in paper bundles, tied with string. She knows your name, though you've never asked for hers. When the water begins to boil, you pour it into your cup and inhale the steam. It smells green and old and sharp, like something from a forest or a cupboard that's lived too many lives. You sit again. The steam fogs the window, briefly erasing the stone beyond. You sip slowly. You allow your mind to drift just a little. You think of your father, not his face, which has long grown blurry in your memory, but his hands, large, dry, worn smooth by work. He was not a candle maker. He was a cooper, a maker of barrels. But the rhythm was similar, shaping things to hold other things. His shop always smelled of wood shavings and smoke. A different kind of smoke, darker, sharper. But the feeling was the same. He never rushed. He never spoke much. He taught you by motion, how to grip, how to center, how to stay still. You think of your mother less, not out of sadness, but because her presence is in everything. She hummed while she worked. She made soup from nearly nothing. She had a way of folding napkins like letters and placing them beside bowls at night. When she lit candles, she always closed her eyes, just briefly, as though whispering something to the flame. You picked that up from her. Even now, when you light your own candles, you pause, just for a moment, just enough to remember you are not alone, even when the room is silent. The kettle continues to whisper behind you, now empty of task. The scent of herbs fills the space between things, and outside, the light has finally begun to press against the glass. Thin and uncertain, like fingers exploring the edge of a curtain. You rise to check the candles. Your hand rests briefly on the drying rack as you lean in. The wax is cool, the surface smooth. You press the base of the mold, coaxing it upward with gentle pressure. The candle slides free with a soft sigh, like a child turning in sleep. It is perfect, pale and clean. The wick stands straight. You line it on the work table and repeat the process. One by one, the candles emerge from their shells. It is always a quiet kind of joy, nothing loud or triumphant. Just the satisfaction of repetition rewarded. Each candle holds its own minor uniqueness, a tiny bubble here, a gentle swirl in the wax there. You stack them in groups of 5, tie them with twine, and place them in a small basket lined with folded cloth. Bees will go to the bakery on Rue Saint-André-des-Artés. The woman there uses them above the ovens, not for light, but for timing. She lights a candle when the dough is placed in the heat. When it burns halfway, she knows it is time to check the loaves. When it reaches the base, the bread is done. You love that. The candle becomes not only flame, but clock. You glance toward the shelf and select a few shorter ones, ends from older batches, slightly uneven, still lovely. You place them near the window and light one. The match crackles, and then the flame grows. It dances gently, flickering just once, and then steadies into a quiet rhythm. The wax begins to soften. A faint curl of smoke rises. Not black, not sharp, just a thread of warmth in the air. You sip your tea again and close your eyes, letting the scent wash over you. Honey and smoke, wax and memory. You are surrounded by it, saturated in it. You have become it in some small way. You are a candle maker in Paris, and the day is yours. The baskets are packed, the candles tied, the doors unlocked, opened, and the light of Paris, pale but waking, spills into your shop like a quiet visitor. You inhale through your nose, catching the familiar blend of morning, river mist, chimney soot, the distant sweetness of rising bread. The city is not yet fully stretched, but it breathes, and it waits. You step outside with the weight of your work balanced across both arms. The baskets rest against your hips. Each bundle of candles is cushioned in linen, so they will not crack against one another. They're warm still, slightly fragrant and soft in the middle like fresh fruit. You've made this walk countless times. Your shoes know the path. Your body remembers the slope of every stone. The street outside your shop is narrow. Shadows still linger between the buildings, long and slow. A cat watches you from a window ledge, its tail curled neatly around its paws. A single cart creaks in the distance. A boy chases a hoop down the lane. It is not noisy yet, just enough sound to remind you the world is alive. You turn left toward the Rue des Martyrs. The path rises gently uphill, winding through older parts of the city. You've always liked this route. It smells of wet stone and bread, and the ironwork balconies above are often draped with flowers or drying linens. Some of the shutters are still closed. Behind them, people wake slowly. You imagine them stretching, yawning, stepping onto cool floors. Some lighting stoves, some brushing crumbs from tables, some sitting in silence, their eyes not quite open. You walk slowly. Not out of laziness, but because there is no need to rush. The candles do not demand speed. You carry them like offerings, and offerings are not delivered with haste. Your shoes tap against the cobblestone in an even rhythm. You hear the soft squeak of the basket handle shifting against your coat. A bird calls twice from the roof of the apothecary. The sound echoes briefly in the narrow street, like a thought that almost returns. You reach the first stop, a tailor's shop with blue-painted doors and a small wooden bell above the entrance. The tailor is not in yet, but his apprentice waits by the counter, wiping down glass with a cloth that is more threadbare than useful. He sees you and smiles. "Ah, bonjour," he says, holding the door. You nod and step inside. The shop smells of pressed linen, starch, and faintly of lavender, perhaps from sachets tucked in drawers. You remove the first bundle, 4 tall candles wrapped in paper, tied with twine. "For Madame's fittings," you say softly, as you always do. The same words, the same gesture. You place the bundle on the counter. The apprentice nods. "She says the light from yours is warmer," he says, "and doesn't glare in the mirrors." He grins. "I don't know how that works. Not all candles burn the same," you reply gently. He shrugs, as if magic isn't worth arguing about. You don't stay long. Just long enough to note the way that dust dances in the window light, how it sparkles above a row of fabric bolts like tiny suspended stars. Then you're back into the street. You climb higher. The slope steepens. Your legs are used to it. The Rue des Martyrs curls slowly toward the sky, flanked by walls the color of ash and butter. You pass a fountain where water trickles eternally into a stone basin. Someone has placed a flower there, fresh, drooping just slightly. You don't know who leaves it, but it is always there, changing with the season. An iris once, then a marigold, now a white bloom, soft and wide. You pause to look at it. Not long. Just enough to admire the way its reflection wavers in the water. Then you continue. The second stop is a bookshop. It is run by an older man whose eyes are permanently tired. He speaks little, but his back room smells like heaven, ink, dust, parchment, leather. You do not knock. You open the door with your shoulder and nod in greeting. He is bent over a crate, arranging spines. He gestures toward the counter. You place 2 squat candles near the register. He prefers them wide, with thick wicks that don't flicker when the wind leaks under the door. He once told you he reads only by candlelight after sunset because lamps feel too modern, too harsh. Books should be read in silence and shadow, he'd said. You'd agreed. As you turn to leave, he murmurs, "Merci." His voice is like old paper, dry but kind. Back on the street, the wind picks up. It tugs gently at your sleeves and brushes the brim of your hat. A scent follows it. Roasted chestnuts, likely from the man with the copper cart near the boulevard. You've passed him before. He whistles while he roasts, always the same tune. You can't name it, but you know the shape of its notes. The final stop is farther, near the crest of the hill just before the city opens again. It is a bakery, small and square, with black-framed windows and a stone oven that breathes into the street. The smell arrives before the door, yeast, sugar, wood smoke. A woman inside waves when she sees you. Her hands are dusted with flour. "You're early," she says. "Your candles were ready," you reply. She wipes her hands on her apron and takes the basket from you. Inside are 6 slim tapers and 1 wider pillar. She uses the pillar near the register. The tapers go above the ovens, lit one after another as her shift progresses. "You must stay for bread," she insists. You smile, but shake your head. She frowns and wraps a small loaf anyway, handing it to you. "Take it," she says, warm. "For your hands, if not your belly, you accept it." The loaf is soft, still steaming slightly. The warmth bleeds through the paper into your palms. You thank her, quietly, and step back into the light. From this height, Paris unfolds. The rooftops stretch out in waves, terracotta, slate, soot-streaked and bright. Chimneys puff like old men clearing their throats. Church towers rise like sighs above the clutter. A gull calls far overhead. You stand for a moment, not to admire, but to breathe. This city, for all its noise and ferment, still holds places like this, still holds you. You turn to descend, the empty basket now swinging slightly at your side. The bread in your hand is warm and fragrant. You break a piece off and chew slowly as you walk. Below, your workshop waits. The wax may have cooled again. Perhaps there's time for another batch before the sun reaches its peak, but for now, the morning belongs to you. To the soft tap of your feet, to the scent of bread and beeswax, to the gentle hush of stone streets and the light they carry. You return to the workshop with the soft weight of the morning still resting gently on your shoulders. The bread from the bakery, warm and fragrant, is tucked neatly into its paper wrap and placed on the small wooden shelf beside the stove. You'll tear into it later, maybe with some cheese if you remember. For now, you untie your coat, hang it by the door, and wipe the faint trail of flour from your sleeve. Inside, the space feels different after your walk. The air is warmer. The wax you poured before leaving has cooled into a soft, dull finish, waiting to be trimmed. You place the empty baskets beside the door and pull your stool toward the bench. The smell of smoke clings faintly to your collar, and the hum of street noise outside has risen. But in here, your hands are your world again. You're trimming the bases of the candles when you hear the bell. A gentle jingle, not sharp. The sound of the door opening carefully. You glance up. She steps in like she's entering a memory, slowly, eyes scanning the room, one hand resting lightly on the inside of the door. The other hand, gloved in deep green leather, carries a book, its edges worn, its spine cracked. She is not unfamiliar. She has come before, but never often. Always on foot, always alone. She never rushes, never startles, never announces herself. Today, her coat is charcoal gray, the hem damp with rain. Her hat is small and neat, with a curved brim that frames her face like punctuation. Her gloves are the color of moss, rich and cool. She closes the door behind her with a softness that tells you she respects silence. "Bonjour," she says, her voice like velvet folded once. You nod. "Bonjour." She steps further in. Her boots make little sound against the floorboards. She sets the book on the counter, glancing once at the candles laid out on the bench. Her gaze is always curious, never invasive. She looks at things the way a reader studies a poem, slowly, thoughtfully, like waiting to be spoken to. "You've changed your wax," she says, not as a question, but as an observation. "A slightly different blend," you answer. "A bit more tallow. Less honeycomb." She nods. "It smells softer." You smile. That was the idea. There's a pause, pleasant, not awkward, the kind that holds space like a room filled with cushions. She removes one glove, fingers pale against the wood, and traces a circle around the base of a candle. Her touch doesn't disturb it. It's the touch of someone who understands what it is to make things. "I've brought another book," she says, lifting it towards you. You take it gently. The cover is leather, flaking slightly at the corners. A book of folk medicine, handwritten, the ink faded by time and thumbs. You flip through the pages, tinctures, recipes, descriptions of herbs. In the margins, someone has added notes in a thinner hand. "I thought you might like it," she says. "You mentioned rose oil last time." You nod, grateful, and feel the small shift of something warm inside your chest. A gift not for its value, but for its attention, for the fact that she remembered. "I'll read it tonight," you say. She steps back slightly, and the light from the small front window catches her hair, dark but glinting like copper at the edges. She glances again at your shelves where bundles of candles rest in quiet rows. "May I have 4 again?" she asks. The mid-length tapers. "I like how they burn." You move to wrap them. You don't ask what she uses them for. You never have. She doesn't speak of her home or her work. You suspect she's a writer, or perhaps a painter, but she could be neither. She could be someone who simply likes quiet and books and candlelight, and for you, that's enough. As you tie the bundle, she watches your hands. She always does. You wonder if she notices the tiny burns near your knuckles, the wax stains beneath your fingernails. She never comments. You hand her the package. She holds it close, like something delicate. "These last longer than they should," she says. "They seem to forget how quickly time moves." "Maybe they burn slowly on purpose," you offer. "Maybe," she replies, her smile quiet but bright. She places a coin on the counter. Too much, as always. You start to protest, but she shakes her head. "Consider it an exchange," she says. "For the scent of the shop, for your silence, for the hour of peace it gives me." You say nothing, only nod. She slips her glove back on and turns toward the door. Before she leaves, she pauses. "Do you ever keep one for yourself?" she asks. "A candle?" You hesitate, then admit, "Not often." She looks at you a moment longer, then says softly, "You should. Even a candle needs to be seen by its maker." Then she's gone. The bell jingles again. The door closes. The quiet returns. You place the coin in the box beneath the counter and pick up the book she left behind. Its weight is comforting in your hands. You flip to a page marked with a pressed leaf time, brittle but whole. The note beside it reads, "For clarity, for breath, for what is lost." You look toward the window. Outside, the street is busier now. A cart rolls by. A man shouts. A child laughs. But inside your shop, the silence remains undisturbed. You set the book gently beside your tea and begin the next batch of candles. Wax, wick, mold, pour, weight, shape. The rhythm is familiar, like a song you've known since childhood. And as the wax cools, a thought lingers in your mind, not sharp, not loud, but warm and steady and tinged with green. Even a candle needs to be seen by its maker. Perhaps tonight you'll keep one. The afternoon moves like honey, thick and slow, golden where it touches the work table and shadows. The sun has crept halfway across the narrow window pane. You mark its progress not with a clock, but with light. It stretches longer now, brushing over the wax-cured shelves, warming the jars of oil and bundles of herbs stored carefully near the stove. Your fingers move without urgency, trimming wicks, polishing molds, turning the cooling candles like loaves of bread set out to rest. You take a break, not because you're tired, but because the moment asks you to. There's a small stool by the front door, and you settle into it with a soft exhale. On the shelf behind you, the loaf from this morning still waits, wrapped neatly, warmth long gone, but fragrance intact. You tear a piece from the end and hold it close. It's dense and chewy, the crust thin and cracking in all the right places. You eat slowly, not because of hunger, but because of stillness. The act of chewing becomes meditative, simple, present. And then, as you brush the crumbs from your lap, you remember. She asked for another candle. Not in writing, not in coin, but in the way people ask without asking, with eyes, with pause, with the way hands linger near the light without reaching for it. The baker's wife. She hadn't said the words, but you'd understood her meaning as clearly as if she had. So you rise. You set aside the unfinished batch and begin to melt a small portion of wax in your oldest copper pot, the one with the darkened bottom and faint dent along its side. You choose a wide mold for this one. She likes the low-burning kind, the ones that don't flicker wildly but rather emit a soft, reliable glow. You add just a trace of lavender oil. Not enough to announce itself, just enough to whisper. While it melts, you prepare the wick. You hold it steady between your thumb and forefinger, then dip it in wax and hang it by the window to set. It stiffens quickly in the cooling air like a reed in morning frost. When the wax is ready, you pour. The mold fills slowly, the golden liquid rippling as it settles. There's something satisfying about watching it take shape, something reassuring about the obedience of material to memory. You don't rush, you never do. You know by feel when it's time to stop, when the wax reaches that perfect line just beneath the rim. You set it near the window to cool and step outside while you wait. The street has changed since morning. Louder now. Fuller. Someone plays a violin far off, the notes faint and lilting. A dog barks once, a wheelbarrow rattles past, but none of it feels intrusive. It feels like a story being told in the background while you continue writing your own. You walk toward the bakery. It's not far. Just 2 turns down and a half block over. The air is thick with the smell of fresh pastry, butter, and sweetened fruit. The scent wraps around you like a shawl. The bakery door is propped open, and the warmth inside reaches you before your hand even finds the handle. She's there, behind the counter. The baker's wife. Older than you by at least a decade, her hands are square and pink from years of kneading dough. Her hair is always tied back in a scarf. Her apron always dusted in flour. She sees you before you speak and smiles. "You've brought one," she says. You nod and place the wrapped candle on the counter between you. She doesn't unwrap it immediately. She just rests her hand on top of it, palm flat against the paper, as if feeling its temperature or listening to the silence within it. "My mother used to keep a candle burning in the kitchen," she says. "Not for the light, just for company." You don't respond right away. "There's no need," she continues, quieter now. "I've been lighting one lately, in the mornings, before anyone's awake. The house is still then. It makes the oven feel like it's breathing." You nod. "Candles, remember," you say simply. She unwraps the candle, eyes softening at the shape and color. She lifts it gently and places it on the small shelf beside her ledger. "It'll sit here," she says, "near the yeast. It likes warmth." You smile. She opens the register, places a few coins on the counter, but you push them back. "This one's a gift," you say. She tilts her head, hand pausing midair. "You sure?" You nod. "You've fed me more than once, and warmth should be returned." She lets the coins stay, and instead reaches behind her to a wooden tray of pastries. She selects one, a flaky, golden triangle filled with something soft and sweet, and wraps it without a word. She presses it into your hand. "For after your work," she says. "We all need sweetness at the end of the day." You leave quietly, the candle's place now filled with warmth and sugar. On the way home, you take the long path, letting your feet trace the edge of the Seine. The river is quiet today, its surface smooth and reflective, like brushed silk. A boat passes, low and slow, and the waves it leaves behind lap gently at the mossy banks. You pause for a moment to watch, then continue. Back at the workshop, the light has softened into amber. You place the pastry on your work table and check on the remaining candles. They've cooled fully now, and the scent in the air is soothing wax, oil, and a faint trace of lavender. You trim the wicks and wrap the bundles. And then, in the hush that follows, you do something you rarely do. You light a candle, one of your own. You place it on the windowsill beside your journal. The flame catches quickly and stands straight, as if eager to be seen. The light it casts is quiet, golden, and still. You sit by it. Not to work, not to plan, just to be. As the wax softens and the scent deepens and the room darkens gently around you, you realize this is what she meant, the baker's wife. The candle isn't just light, it's presence. It's memory. It's something to keep you company when your hands are still. Evening doesn't arrive in Paris all at once. It seeps in, gently, like a slow tide, washing up the narrow streets and curling into window frames. The rooftops catch the last light like soft flames, flickering briefly before sinking into gray. You watch it unfold from your seat beside the work table, the candle casting a small, warm glow that hums in harmony with the dark. You don't speak. You don't need to. In this hour, the city exhales. The noise softens. The clatter, the laughter, the wheels and footsteps all become muffled beneath the rising hush. There is something sacred in this time between light and full dark. It feels like holding your breath beneath a blanket, the whole world pausing for a moment of shared stillness. You lean forward and dip the nib of your pen into the ink pot, the motion smooth from repetition. Your journal eyes open, half filled with your careful script. Not a diary, not quite. Just reflections, measurements, candles made, scents tried, small noticings, how the wax behaved that day, what the air felt like, who visited, what lingered. You write, twilight came slowly today. Lavender held in the corners. The street outside was quieter than usual. One bird called twice and then was gone. The flame flickers beside your hand, casting long shadows along the page. The ink dries to a soft sheen. You breathe it in. You let the pen rest. Sometimes, in this hour, you think about how many candles you've made. Not to count them, not to inventory, but just to wonder. Hundreds, perhaps thousands. Each one a breath of light waiting to be lit. Each one passed through your hands with the care of something alive. You imagine where they are now. Some may be burned to the base, their stubs discarded, their stories over. Some may still sit untouched in drawers waiting for need. Some may have been saved for something special and forgotten altogether. But a few, just a few, you know are burning this very moment. Across the city. In kitchens, in bedrooms, on bedside tables and writing desks. You can almost feel them. Like tiny stars scattered through the narrow streets, sharing your flame. You let the thought linger. It comforts you. You stretch your arms over your head, spine curving gently with the motion. Your body, though used to long hours, appreciates the kindness. Your fingers are speckled with wax, your apron creased with a day's work. You rub your hands together and feel the roughness at your fingertips. Evidence of labor, of presence. A log crackles softly in the stove. It's not much, just a single stick of wood you placed there earlier. But the flame inside is steady, and its heat wraps around the small room like a shawl. You rise and feed it another piece, watching the glow grow stronger. The fire does not roar. It doesn't need to. It burns with intention, like the candle on the sill, modest, content enough. You sit back down and close your eyes, letting the warmth soak through your skin. And it's here, in this hush of flickering light and rising dark, that something soft enters your thoughts. A quiet suggestion, no louder than a breath. If you found warmth in this space, if this stillness feels like home, perhaps you'd like to leave a small light behind. A whisper, a trace, a like, or a shared word, or simply subscribing to keep the glow alive. The thought drifts through you like smoke curling upward. You don't dwell on it. You let it pass, gentle and unobtrusive, and return to the silence around you. A few minutes later, you stand and move to the front of the shop. The window shows the street now bathed in blue, the lamps outside lit one by one. You recognize the lamplighter by his silhouette, the same man each evening. You walk with purpose, not quickly, not slowly. A man accustomed to routine. You watch him lift the pole, touch flame to wick, move on. His job is your mirror. The city grows dimmer, and in response, more lights emerge, like fireflies blinking alive. You see a woman closing shutters, her cat leaping onto the windowsill to help. A man sweeping the steps in front of his door. Two children chasing something invisible near the corner. Life in pieces, all softened by dusk. You return to your candle. It is burned down slightly, the wax pooling in the ring at its base, catching and releasing the glow like a cup of light. You reach for your carving knife, not for shaping, but for trimming. You neaten the edges, remove the drips, give the wick space to continue. A small ritual. Quiet care. Sometimes you wonder what your life would look like from the outside. Not remarkable, perhaps, but steady. Rooted. Your days carry the shape of meaning, even if they don't rise to drama or descend into chaos. You work with your hands. You create something people need. You do it well. There is dignity in that. You know it. And that knowing lives in your spine, in your wrists, in the calm with which you welcome each morning. You rise and blow out the candle. The smoke curls upward, soft and gray, twisting in the air like memory, then disappearing into nothing. You open the small window above the work table and let in the cool night. The scent that enters is damp stone and distant bread and autumn leaves crumbling in corners. The city smells different at night, more honest. You breathe it in and close the window again. You prepare your room upstairs. The stove has kept it warm. The blanket is folded back. The pillow smells faintly of lavender and wax. You change into your sleep clothes, linen, soft and worn, and sit for a moment on the edge of the bed. The day slips from your shoulders like a heavy coat. You let it fall. Then you lie down. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just the quiet stretch of your spine against the mattress, the slowing of your breath, the peace of knowing everything is done for the day. Below you, the last ember in the stove flickers. Across the city, candles made by your hand burn softly in silence. And in the darkness of your room, your body eases into rest, the warmth of the fire still held gently in your bones. The sun has not yet returned. But you have. You rise before the light, not because you are forced to, but because the rhythm of your life has made it easy. The world is still quiet. The walls of your room hold the last shadows of night in soft folds. Your feet find the worn slippers beside the bed, and your hands pull the linen robe around your shoulders without needing to search for it. Everything is where it belongs. Everything greets you without words. Downstairs, the scent of beeswax lingers from the day before, mixed with wood smoke and the cooling embers of the stove. You light a single taper from the stub resting on the table. Its flame is modest, but eager. It follows your movement like a companion. Together, you prepare a small satchel for the morning. This is your day to visit the market, not the busy ones that come alive at noon with fishmongers and lace sellers. This is the early market, the quiet one beneath the covered awnings near the convent, where farmers lay out herbs in wooden trays and old men sell bottles of oil pressed in places only they remember. You pull on your boots. You fasten your coat. Outside, the air bites, not cruelly, but with a bracing honesty. It wakes the skin. You draw your scarf up over your mouth and begin the walk with hands tucked in your pockets, the satchel slung over one shoulder. The streets are damp from a night of mist. Lanterns still glow along the main road, casting soft halos on the stones. A milk cart rattles somewhere behind you, and a church bell chimes softly in the distance, more like a cough than a call. The market waits at the end of Rue Saint-Médard, nestled in the elbow of two alleyways. It's not large, not loud. A few stalls, half a dozen vendors, and the gentle murmur of shared mourning. You nod to the man who sells bundles of dried flowers. He returns the gesture without words, continuing to arrange the sprigs of rosemary, thyme, and rue in careful rows. His hands move with grace, despite their age. You stop first at the wax seller. She is already unpacking her bundles, pressed slabs of golden beeswax wrapped in muslin and tied with string. You recognize the scent before you see it. Honey warmed by sun, with an edge of meadow clover and dust. She looks up and smiles. No teeth, but all kindness. "You're early," she says, voice like worn paper. "So are you," you reply, handing her a small folded cloth with a few coins nestled inside. She weighs the wax in her palm before passing it over. "Good harvest this year," she murmurs. "Less smoke, more bloom." You nod and thank her. The slab is heavy and fragrant in your satchel. You run a thumb over its edge, smooth and familiar. This wax has not yet remembered what it will become, but you know. Next, you find the herb woman. She sells more than herbs. Bottles of oil, vials of crushed flour, tiny bags of salt dyed with violet and rose. You recognize the shapes of her goods before her face. She always wears too many scarves, one stacked upon the other like layers of wind. "Lavender?" she asks, before you can open your mouth. You smile. "And some bay, maybe rosemary." She nods and begins measuring the leaves into folded parchment. Her fingers move swiftly, but not without care. Each bundle is tied with a single black thread. She adds a sprig of something you don't recognize. For protection, she says simply. You don't argue. You never do. Your last stop is the oil vendor. His stall is a rough wooden table with a crooked leg, propped up by a folded stone. The bottles are lined in uneven rows, labels handwritten, corks sealed with wax. He doesn't speak, but his eyes are sharp. He watches you choose. Sweet almond, rose, a small vial of bergamot. You pay him in silence. He nods once, solemn and satisfied. With your satchel full and your coat heavier, you turn toward home. The sky is starting to pale now. The dark softens to a gentle gray. The wind has faded, and the air carries the first hint of wood fires being stirred to life across the city. You walk slower, not because of the weight, but because this part of the morning feels like a secret. The streets are still yours. The light belongs to no one. The corners are lit only by memory and breath. You stop at the bridge for a moment. The Seine moves lazily beneath, its surface dark and dimpled. A swan drifts beneath the arch, its body a blur in the low light. The city breathes with you, slow and steady. You rest a hand on the cold stone railing and watch the world stretch. And just before you leave the moment behind, a whisper, light as vapor, crosses your thoughts. If this quiet has held you gently, if these early hours have brought you calm, perhaps you'd like to keep this flame alive. A shared breath, a simple gesture, a share, a memory carried forward. You breathe it in and let it pass like fog lifting from the river. At home, you unpack the satchel carefully. The wax is placed near the stove to warm slowly. The herbs go into their small jars, labeled and tidy. The oils are wrapped in cloth and stacked in the cabinet where the light cannot touch them. You pause to inhale the scent rising from your hands. Lavender, sweet almond, beeswax. This is the beginning of something. You don't rush to the molds. You don't light the fire yet. Instead, you sit again by the window, your breath visible in the morning chill, and let the stillness complete its circle. Somewhere in the city, another candle is being lit. You feel it. Later in the morning, as the shop returns to its rhythm and the sun rests lightly on the windowsill, you hear the soft clink of metal against wood. 2 coins placed gently on your counter. You look up. It's the apprentice from the apothecary. He stands with his shoulders slightly hunched, a leather satchel across his chest and his hands smelling faintly of bitter herbs. His coat is too short at the wrists, and his face still carries the softness of someone not long out of boyhood. But he stands tall, trying his best to carry the authority of a message not his own. He clears his throat and recites the request. Master Beltram says he needs 12 new tapers, unscented. Burn slow, no drip. You nod. By Friday, the apprentice blinks. He said soon, which means yes, by Friday. You smile and reach for your small ledger. And the colors? He shrugs. He didn't say, but he always takes the ivory ones, doesn't he? You flip back a few pages and confirm. Ivory. Yes. Same size? Same as always, he says, then adds a little awkwardly. He says the last batch lasted longer than usual. He wants to know what you changed. You glance at the shelf where the wax blocks are stacked, neatly wrapped in cloth and tied with twine. Less tallow, slightly cooler pour. The apprentice furrows his brow. Is that good? For this type, yes, you say. The wick holds longer. More consistent burn. He nods slowly, not because he fully understands, but because he knows he's meant to agree. You mark down the order and begin wrapping the coins in a square of muslin. The apothecary always pays in advance, not out of generosity, but because he dislikes owing anyone. The apprentice watches your hands move. How do you get them not to drip? He asks, curiosity finally outweighing his formality. You glance at him, amused. Patience. He gives a sheepish grin, as if expecting a more technical answer. You add, the wax must be clean, poured at the right temperature, and the wick matters he finishes. That's what he says about everything. The base ingredients matter. You nod. He's not wrong. He shifts on his feet. I like the way it smells in here, he says suddenly. Like something warm but not sweet. You let the compliment rest without responding. Sometimes words are best left to hang in the air like steam from a kettle. He thanks you and turns to leave, but then pauses, hand on the doorframe. You should come by sometime, he says. The apothecary likes to talk about your candles when customers are there. Says you burn them like prayers. You raise an eyebrow. Does he? He shrugs. He won't admit it. But I think he lights them when he reads at night. Then he disappears down the street. You return to your molds, hands steady, thoughts slower than before. An order like this isn't difficult. It's the kind of task you could do blindfolded now, but something about it feels grounding. There's trust in repetition, purpose in precision. And when your work travels into places like the apothecaries where tinctures are measured and ailments whispered, you know the flame becomes more than light. It becomes part of a ritual. You select your materials carefully. The wax is weighed and melted, poured in batches that feel familiar to your body. The room warms around you, not uncomfortably, just enough to soften the wax in your muscles at the same time. While they cool, you write Beltrame's name on the wrappings, small, careful letters on parchment ties. Each one is a signature, in a way, a promise that the candle will burn slow, even, clean, just as he expects. As you set the finished row on the shelf, ready for delivery later in the week, the door creaks softly. A breeze follows, lifting a corner of your apron, tickling the flame on the candle by the sill. It's quiet outside. But inside, the room is full with scent, with memory, with the invisible threads of stories woven into the smallest gestures. And now, in this pause, a thought flickers subtle and warm. If this story keeps you company, if these moments feel like something worth holding, perhaps you'll help them travel further. A shared flame, a quiet signal. Subscribe to keep the glow alive. You breathe in, then out. The wind settles, and you return to your workbench. You begin preparing a smaller batch. Not for order, not for coin, just for practice. You try something different, an old oil mixture, barely used anymore. Clove and sage with a hint of vetiver. You remember your grandfather mentioning it once. For winter evenings, he'd said, when the wind knocks and the soul wants warmth. The scent is deep, earthy, familiar in a way you can't name. You pour slowly. The wax settles in its mold like water in a basin, and as the day thins into a softer light, you tidy the shop, brush wax flakes from the floor, stack the finished candles in even rows. You place the unused trimmings in a jar for reuse. Nothing wasted, nothing forgotten. You take a moment to light one of the new candles, just to test it. The flame catches, flares, then settles. Its scent grows gently like old books and cedar, the comfort of something worn. You let it burn for a while. And as twilight nudges its way back into the corners, you feel the calm settle over your shoulders again. Like wool, like smoke, like a story told, not with words, but with light. There's a corner of Paris few people speak of, not because it's hidden, but because it's quiet. Too quiet for those who chase noise, too still for the ones who measure worth by movement. But you know it well. Down a stone path curved with moss, tucked between an ivy-covered wall and a small bakery that closes early, stands a chapel. It isn't grand. It isn't gilded. Its stones are uneven, its bell rusted, its windows dulled by decades of soot and dust. But the air around it holds a reverence that requires no polish. Once a month, you bring candles there, not because of a contract, not because of coin, simply because they asked long ago, and you've never found a reason to stop. It's dusk now, and your basket is full. 12 hand-poured tapers, wrapped in cloth and tied with a linen ribbon. The scent is simple. Beeswax only, No oils. The candles made for the chapel must speak in silence, like prayers that have forgotten their own words. You walk slowly. The streets around the chapel are mostly empty at this hour. The last of the merchants are pulling in their carts. A young man sings in the alley to himself, tuneless but unbothered. You pass a cat curled on a window ledge, one paw twitching in a dream. By the time you reach the chapel gate, the sky is a deep blue-gray. The last light of the sun barely grazes the tiled roof, making it shimmer like slate. The door is already ajar. As always, they expect you. Inside, it smells of dust and stone, of old wood and flickering memory. No incense, no choir. Just the quiet echo of your steps against the floorboards and the distant whisper of wind through a cracked pane of glass. You place the basket gently on the altar steps. There's no one here yet. The sisters come later after their meal, but you know the way. Along the side walls, iron holders await, 6 on each side, mounted between old paintings and niches that once held saints. Some still do, though time has softened their features into little more than shadows. You light each candle with care, watching the flames catch and bloom. The light spreads slowly. At first, the room remains dim, the dark holding on with thin fingers. But one by one, the flames grow stronger and the walls begin to glow. The wooden pews stretch out in quiet rows, like listeners leaning forward. You walk to the center and sit, not for long. Just enough. The air is cool, but not cold. The flicker of the candlelight moves like breath across the walls. You watch the way it climbs the arches, settles into the stone grooves. Each movement of flame feels ancient, even if the wax is new. This chapel is a place out of time. You remember the first time you came, a different winter, a different you. You were younger, but still tired. A sister had passed you on the street, her hands red with cold, carrying 3 candles in an old bag. You offered her yours instead. Better made, a gift. She returned the next day. They've asked you for candles ever since. Not with expectations, not even with thanks, just presence, a rhythm. They leave coins when they can, bread sometimes. Once, a small knitted scarf in a shade of green you still don't know the name of. You stay seated as the bells toll softly outside. One long note, it doesn't call anyone. It just announces the hour like a breath being let go. And in that exhale, a gentle nudge rises, like warmth from the stones. If you found light in this quiet, if the flicker of these moments has soothed you, perhaps you'll carry it forward with a share, a whisper, a soft invitation to others seeking calm. The thought lingers, then fades like smoke curling toward the rafters. You rise. Before you leave, you take one last look at the room. The candles glow steadily now. The shadows have receded. Everything breathes in stillness. You close the chapel door behind you, gently. Outside, the city is soft. The blue above has deepened to violet. Windows light up one by one as people return home. The baker is sweeping his steps. The paper seller is folding his last edition. The world continues. But you feel quieter, more steady. You begin your walk home with hands in your coat, the scent of wax still clinging to your collar. You take the longer route this time, past the bookstore with the cracked glass, where pages always seem to flutter even when there's no wind. You stop once to admire the way the lamplight pools on the cobblestones, how it mirrors the chapel, how it mirrors the candles on your own table. When you reach your door, the sky has turned black velvet. You open the workshop slowly, careful not to disturb the peace you've gathered. The air inside is warm, familiar, safe, a place where nothing demands of you, only invites. You light a small candle, not out of need, but for companionship. It burns beside you as you untie your scarf, unbutton your coat, and place the basket back on its hook. The flame reflects gently in the window pane. You watch it for a while, and then, like the sisters in the chapel, you let it speak for you. The following morning, there is a breeze in the air that doesn't belong to summer anymore. It slips under the door and presses its cool fingers along the floorboards. It curls around your ankles as you sip your first cup of warm water, steeped lightly with mint. Outside, the light is sharp but not warm, the kind of brightness that accompanies change. You pause in the doorway before beginning your work. The city is stirring, but not in its usual way. There's a hum beneath the surface, a restlessness. Horses clatter down the streets more quickly than usual. The baker opens his shop 15 minutes early. A man near the corner speaks a little louder than the wind requires. His words don't quite reach you, but the edge in his voice does. Still, your world holds its shape. You turn back inside and begin heating the wax. There is comfort in the ordinary. The copper pot, the measured scoop, the way the wax softens and shifts from solid to liquid like a memory being stirred awake. Your fingers know the dance. Wick, dip, rest, turn, pour. But even as you move, the weight of something invisible presses gently against your shoulders. Not urgently, not unkindly, just present. You find yourself watching the street more often, pausing between pours, listening longer to the murmurs outside. There are more people than usual, moving more quickly, some carrying baskets packed higher than they need. A few with scarves pulled tighter, not for cold, but for privacy. You see two men standing at a crossroads, speaking in hushed tones with their arms crossed tightly over their chests. The city is preparing. It doesn't know what for, but it knows. You remember once, as a child, watching a storm roll across the fields outside your grandmother's cottage. The clouds had moved in silently. No thunder, no lightning, just a slow darkening, as if the sky had made up its mind. That feeling has returned. And yet, your hands keep working. You pour 5 candles for the artist near the river. He always requests narrow ones for his long nights. 2 for the widow by the well, who asks for extra light to help her thread a needle in the dark. A small taper for yourself, just because the shape felt right in your palm. You let the wax cool as the sun begins its climb. At midday, a knock at your door startles you more than it should. It's the lamplighter off-duty, coat unbuttoned, hands in his pockets. He doesn't ask to come in, just stands on your step and says, "Strange feeling in the air, isn't there?" You nod. Different. He shifts his weight. They say there's trouble at the Hotel de Ville. Some sort of speech. Too many people gathered. You raise an eyebrow. A speech? He shrugs. That's what I heard. Or a proclamation. Or someone refusing to pay a tax. You know how rumors move. You do. They arrive before truth and often stay longer. He leans forward, his voice lower. They say things are going to change soon. Properly change. He pauses. Do you believe it? He looks past you, into your workshop, where the candles sit in neat rows, each one silent and unassuming. I don't know, he says, but people are lighting their lamps earlier now, as if night is arriving faster than it should. You let the words rest in the air. He tips his head toward the city. Take care of yourself. And then he's gone. You return to your work, but the rhythm has changed. Not broken, just slower, more reflective. You carry your tools like a ritual now, your movements gentler, as if the wax could sense your thoughts. Later, you light a candle for no one in particular. You place it on the sill where passers-by might see. Not for sale, not for order. Just light. Just presence. It flickers once, then burns strong. And in its glow, something quiet unfolds, a thought that feels like a page being turned. If you found something of value in this soft unfolding, if these shadows and this gentle rhythm have kept you company, you might choose to share the warmth. Subscribe, or share the story, not loudly, just like placing a candle in the window, so others know they are not alone. You breathe in the wax-sweet air. The afternoon dims more quickly than it should. Shadows stretch long across the floor. You find yourself cleaning early, sweeping wax flakes into a jar, wiping the table corners, straightening bundles of herbs without truly needing to. Outside, footsteps are quicker, doors shut harder. There's no panic yet, just preparation. A city sharpening its edges in silence. You open your window. The air is crisper now. The clouds hang low, waiting. You look down and see a boy watching your candle. He stands just beyond the gate, eyes wide, not in fear, but in curiosity. You recognize him. He passed by once with his mother. He stopped then too. You nod gently. He doesn't wave, doesn't speak, just watches the flame as if it tells him something no voice could. You leave the candle burning and return inside. You wrap the finished batch and tie each one with care. And as evening approaches, you sit with your back to the stove, legs curled beneath you, a cup of warm water in hand. You let the day settle into your bones. You don't know what tomorrow will bring, but tonight you have your breath, your hands, your flame. The bells begin earlier than usual. You notice it before your eyes are fully open, the soft, uneven clanging rising through the still morning like ripples in a shallow pool. Not urgent, not ceremonial, just louder, more frequent, as if the sound itself is trying to carry a message too complex for words. You lie still for a moment, listening. 3 tolls, a pause, then 2 more, another pause, then silence. You sit up slowly, your body remembering the chill before your mind does. The wooden floor greets your feet with its usual coolness, and the air smells faintly of smoke and early wind. Outside the window, the sky holds no color yet, just a gradient of slate and silver. Downstairs, the wax is waiting. You don't rush. There's something about today that insists you move slowly. You heat the water first. Steam curls over the lip of the kettle in a lazy spiral. You wrap your hands around the warm mug and lean in to inhale. Chamomile and mint, the herbs crushed gently last week, still fresh in their promise. The bells chime again, closer now. This time, you count 6 strikes. You finish your tea. It's market day, or it was supposed to be. Your bag is already packed. A few candles to trade, a note to pass to the bookbinder, a list of oils to inquire about from the herb merchant. But something stops you from reaching for your coat. The silence between the bells is heavier now, not fearful, just full, like a breath held a beat too long. You step outside. The street is quieter than you expected. The usual clatter of wheels and greetings and shutters being thrown open is absent. A dog barks once and falls silent. The air feels stretched, thin at the edges, like fabric about to tear. A woman you recognize walks quickly past your shop. She usually stops to wave. Today, she keeps her head down. You follow the winding path toward the square, not because you want to be among the crowd, if there is one, but because you feel drawn to the heart of the quiet. Paris is still, but not asleep. She's waiting. At the end of Rue Saint-Pierre, near the old bronze statue of the saint, a few people have gathered. Not many, just enough to make the silence feel shared. They aren't speaking. Not really. Just murmuring, eyes turned toward the center of the square, where a notice has been nailed to a post. A man reads it aloud in a low voice, the words slipping through the cold like pebbles dropped into water. You don't push forward. You don't need to. You've heard enough stories to know this feeling. The moment just before the hinge turns. The moment history stands behind a door, waiting to be let in. You turn back. There is nothing more for you in the square today. The market stalls are closed. The carts have not arrived. Even the usual scent of bread from the bakery has been replaced by the distant smell of smoke and boiled wool. On your walk home, you see the boy again. The same one who washed your candle from the gate. Today, he holds his mother's hand tightly. He isn't crying, just watching the street with a kind of careful focus too old for his years. You give a nod and he nods back. It's enough. Back inside, you light a taper, not for light, but for balance. The flame steadies you. It always does. You begin preparing a new batch, not because of an order, not because of routine, but because making something by hand is your way of answering the world's unspoken questions. The wax warms slowly in its copper pot. The scent rises, a quiet sweetness, earthy and familiar. You stir without thought. Pour without haste. Each movement brings the world back into focus. Outside, the bells continue. Farther now, fewer now, echoing between the stones like footsteps in a cathedral. You trim wicks with a blade that's grown dull with repetition. Your fingers move over the linen cords with a kind of reverence, as if tying knots in a sacred ritual. And as you wrap each finished candle in parchment, a thought returns, uninvited, but welcome. If this quiet has given you space, if this stillness feels like shelter, perhaps you'll pass it forward. With a whisper, a trace, a simple candle left in another's path, a like, a share, a spark held gently. You breathe deeply. The workshop glows with late morning light now, stretching through the window like fingers reaching toward memory. You place the newly wrapped candles on the shelf, stack them carefully, then sit, not to rest, but to listen, not to sound, but to space. There is a rhythm to days like this, not in words or tasks, but in how the world feels heavier and lighter all at once, as if something unseen is shifting just beneath the surface. You make a simple lunch, bread, soft cheese, a single fig sliced in quarters. You eat slowly, each bite grounding you, and when the sun begins its slow descent once more, you light a second candle. One for yourself, one for the city, not as a signal, not as protest, just as presence, a gentle witness, a reminder that even as things move beyond your control, you still choose how to carry your own light. You sit beside the flame until the shadows lengthen, and then, one by one, you begin to prepare your home for night, not in fear, not in hurry, but in care. Because whatever the city may become tomorrow, tonight, the wax is warm. The candle is steady, and your hands are still your own. You find the old box in the back of the cupboard, behind the rolled parchment and the unused molds. Dust clings to its corners like cobwebs of time, but you know exactly what it holds. Letters. Dozens of them. None ever sent. You carry the box to your table and lift the lid gently, as though afraid the contents might sigh or speak. The paper is yellowed at the edges, some corners curled, others flattened by weight and waiting. Each one is tied with a thread brown, faded blue, a few pieces of rough twine. You don't open them yet. Instead, you sit back and let your hands rest on the wooden edge of the table. The candle flickers beside you. The wax pool at its base grows wider, slower. The room hums with quiet, as if the walls themselves remember these pages. You open the first one. Your handwriting is neater than you remember. Slanted, deliberate, it's dated 6 years ago. You recognize the rhythm of the phrasing before you finish the first line. I don't know if this is what you'd want to hear. You smile, not sadly, just softly. That one was written to your brother, the one who moved to the coast and never wrote back. You never mailed it. Not out of bitterness, just hesitation. You weren't sure words could reach across the kind of silence that grows between choices. The second letter is to someone you no longer remember. The name is familiar, Lucette, but the face has faded. The letter speaks of a garden, of evenings spent listening to rain against glass. You wrote, I hope the jasmine bloomed again this year, and something in you aches without knowing why. The third is addressed to no one. It begins, if I had a second lifetime, I would spend it making things no one asked for. You pause. That version of you still lives here, in this room, in every candle you pour without commission, in the tapers made only to be given away, in the shapes you carve for the joy of seeing something form from nothing. You keep reading, letter after letter folded carefully, all different lengths, all written in moments like this one, when the city breathes more slowly and you need to place something down in ink before it slips into forgetting. None were meant for the post. They were meant for you. Anchors, reflections, companions. You set them gently on the table, like resting leaves pulled from a still pond. And now, a familiar thought settles beside you. Warm, unhurried. Perhaps the quiet you found here is the same someone else seeks tonight. If these words have kept you company, A like, a whisper, or a simple share might pass the stillness along. It lingers a moment longer, then passes. You wrap the letters again, not too tightly, not because they're finished, but because they've been heard. You return the box to its shelf, brush the dust away with your sleeve, and pause with your hand on the wood. There is peace in knowing not everything has to be sent. Some things simply want to be said. The candle burns low now. You trim the wick. You warm your hands over the soft heat rising from the wax. You can hear the city shifting outside, carts moving slower than usual, voices hushed, a window shutting more firmly than the wind requires. But inside is calm. You prepare a fresh mold, not for an order, but for memory. A new candle, poured tonight, scented with fig leaf and sage, to keep this evening close. You let the wax cool beside you. You write the date on a scrap of paper and tuck it under the base for the night the letters were opened. The sun is nearly gone now. The light outside fades from pewter to ink. You move about the room, folding cloth, rinsing tools, setting the kettle on the edge of the stove. The stillness grows, not heavier, but fuller. You make a small supper roasted onion, a heel of bread, a cup of water. It is enough. It is warm. You eat slowly, thinking of nothing in particular, and everything all at once. And when you blow out the candle beside you, the room dims with grace. You sit in the quiet. You let it rest on your shoulders like a shawl. Tonight, the city is uncertain. The world beyond your walls may stir or sleep uneasily. But here, within this narrow shop and its shelves of wax and oil, you hold on to the slow, steady truth of fire that even the smallest flame in the deepest dark can be enough. You lie down as the stars begin to bloom above unseen, and sleep, when it arrives, finds you already drifting. You wake to a sound you do not expect. It isn't the bell, or the rattle of a cart, or even the distant lowing of a morning horse. It is softer than that. A knock. 3 gentle raps at the door. Careful. Intentional. The sky is still pale, more silver than blue. The sun has not yet risen above the chimneys, and the chill in the room confirms that the fire in the stove has long gone out. You wrapped yourself in a shawl before descending the stairs, your steps quiet out of instinct rather than need. When you open the door, the morning greets you with stillness. And a man you do not recognize. He is young, no more than 30, with shoulders broad beneath a dark wool coat. His boots are muddy, his gloves tucked into the crook of his elbow. He carries nothing but a single letter, sealed with wax so dark it looks almost black. He removes his hat and nods once, polite but not quite warm. "Forgive me," he says, "for the hour." You nod in return, your fingers tightening slightly around the edge of the door. "I was sent by Madame Fournier. She said you'd understand." You pause at the name. Madame Fournier was your mentor once, many years ago, one of the few who knew the subtle differences between a clean-burning candle and a smoky one, who understood the way scent could shift the mood of a room. She taught you that beeswax carried memory and that tallow softened sorrow. You hadn't heard her name spoken in at least 2 winters. "Is she well?" you ask. The man hesitates. "She is, resting now." You understand. You open the door wider. He steps in without asking further, moving as if drawn by the scent of wax and wood. You gesture to the work table, and he places the letter there, careful not to smudge the seal. "She wanted you to have this," he says. "She said it was meant for you long ago, but she waited." You nod, though you do not know why she waited. Perhaps she had her reasons. Perhaps the letter would tell you. The man does not linger. He nods once again, places his hat back on his head, and steps out into the street. His boots leave damp prints on the stone. You do not close the door right away. You watch the street as it wakes, slowly, gently, smoke rising from the bakery chimney. A small bird landing on the windowsill across the road. The sky shifts from pewter to lilac. Then you shut the door and return to the table. You do not open the letter immediately. You make tea first, your body moving through the motions as if memory has taken the lead. The scent of chamomile and lemon balm grounds you. You sit, You break the wax. Her handwriting flows across the page in the same ink you remember from her notebooks. Then, graceful, exact. You recognize the curve of her G, the way her T never quite crosses fully. My dear, if you are reading this, then I am already part of the past, one of the quiet shadows who taught you the slow language of fire. That is well. We were never meant to burn forever, but I want you to know I watched the way you poured your first candle. I watched how you held the wick like a promise. I saw the gentleness in your silence. You made this more than trade. You made it a memory. I never said it then, because you were young, and I was afraid my praise would shape you too early. But I say it now. Your hands carry light well, better than mine ever did. I have left you something under the hearthstone. You will know which one. With love, F. You read it twice, then again, and then you go to the hearth. You kneel on the warm stones, brushing away ash and soot, fingers moving slowly across the edges. The third one, slightly looser than the rest, lifts with a little effort. Beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth and tied with a faded ribbon, rests a box no larger than your palm. Inside is a candle, a single taper, ivory, beeswax, hand-poured, smooth, and a small note, "Burn me when the night is long." You hold it in both hands. It smells faintly of cedar and rose. You rise and place it on the shelf above your work table. You do not light it, not yet, but knowing it's there changes something. Not in the room, but in you, like a thread quietly pulled tight, forming the beginning of a new stitch. You return to your tea, now slightly cooled, and then you begin to work, not to distract yourself, not to move past the letter, but to move with it. You heat the wax slowly, choosing a blend you haven't used in years, sweet orange with sandalwood, a scent she once called sunset in a bottle. The room fills with its warmth. Your hands move as they always have, but each motion carries a little more weight, not heaviness, just presence. You pour 12 candles. 6 are for orders, 3 are for neighbors, 2 are to set aside, and 1 is for no reason at all, poured simply because your hands wanted to remember something you hadn't yet put into words. And while the wax cools, you write. Not a letter to anyone, not something to be sent, just thoughts, just a page. About the visitor, the letter, the candle. About what it means to leave something behind that only one person will understand. You fold the paper, seal it with a simple dot of wax, and place it inside the same box where your unsent letters live. The bell outside tolls softly. Once. A pause. Then again. And somewhere inside, a thought returns like the echo of a friend's footfall. If this story, in its quiet way, has offered you light or stillness, perhaps leave a trace, a like, a comment, a whisper forward so the flame continues to reach new hearts. You let the thought pass gently and light a fresh taper, not hers, not yet. That will be for another night. Tonight, you let your own wax burn and watch as the light flickers across the page, writing memories in shadow on the walls of your quiet home. The scent of cedar lingers long after the letter has been put away. It is nestled into the grain of your work table, into the folds of your shawl, into the very air that lives between the window panes. It's a quiet scent, one that doesn't announce itself but waits patiently to be noticed, like a memory that steps softly through the halls of your thoughts. Today, you don't rush to light the stove. You sit instead, hands wrapped around a warm mug, eyes watching the dust drift slowly in the slant of morning light. You've always admired how dust moves, not quite floating, not quite falling, just existing between. There's a rhythm to the way your days unfold, a familiar set of actions, slow and purposeful. But today, that rhythm carries a new undercurrent. You feel it in your chest, not discomfort, but awareness, like a candle burning somewhere out of sight. You open the shutters a little wider. Outside, Paris stretches her limbs in the cold light. Chimneys puff steady streams into the sky. A woman sweeps her steps with more force than usual, scattering leaves like thoughts she doesn't want to hold. Two children chase one another down the lane, their laughter thin in the brisk air. You stand, finally, and light the stove. The wax needs time to soften, and so do you. You unwrap the candle Madame Fournier left you and set it beside the others on your shelf. It does not look different, but you know it is. You can feel the difference in the way it rests in your palm, the same way you can tell a letter is important just by the weight of its seal. You run your fingers lightly over its surface. "Burn me when the night is long," she wrote. You do not know if she meant a literal night or one made of sorrow or silence. Perhaps all three. Perhaps she knew that someday a moment would come when even your own candles could not quite reach the edges of the dark. But not yet, not today. You pour the wax slowly, the scent of orange and sandalwood warming the room like old stories. You use the good wicks, the ones you save for quiet afternoons, and your hands find their rhythm once more. Dip, wrap, cool, and then again. While the candle's set, you open the notebook you keep beneath the window. Not the ledger for sales or orders, but the other one, the one for sketches, pressed flowers, bits of poetry that come unannounced. You turn to a blank page. You draw a small flame, not just a flicker, but the whole shape of it, the base, the body, the small curl at the top that leans slightly to the left. You've seen 1,000 flames, but this one is shaped like memory. You draw another and another, each slightly different, like people. Like days, like thoughts whispered aloud when no one is listening. You close the book and let it rest beside your tea. As the candles cool, you prepare a few small bundles, gifts for no one in particular, a set of 3, wrapped in linen, tied with thread. You'll leave one at the bakery later, another near the chapel. The third, perhaps, you'll leave on a doorstep with no name. You've always believed that some light is meant to travel without explanation. As you begin to tidy your space, a breeze finds its way beneath the door. You pause, hands still on the cloth you were folding, and look toward the source. The wax shivers slightly in its mold. Not a draft. A message. You open the door. A letter lies there, tucked beneath a flat stone to keep it from the wind. No name, no seal. You bring it inside, brush away the grit, and unfold it. The handwriting is unfamiliar, quick and slanted. Your candles are everywhere. I've seen them in the hands of those who mourn, in the windows of those who wait, on altars where prayers are too quiet to speak. I do not know your name, but I know the shape of your light. Thank you. That's all. No return address. No request. Just gratitude. You read it twice, then again, and then you place it with the others, tucked carefully between the pages of your notebook, beside the sketch of the leaning flame. Outside, the sky has begun to turn, that soft hue between day and dusk, the color of thought. You light one of the sandalwood candles and watch how it takes to the wick. The flame blooms gently. No smoke, no sputter, just warmth. You place it near the window again like you did before, not to call anyone, not even to God, just to remind the street that light still lives here. That this door, this space, this quiet heart remains open. You prepare supper slowly, a small stew, a crust of bread warmed against the stove, the simple comfort of cooked root vegetables, of salt and bay leaf, of the knowledge that this act of care for yourself is also a kind of candle. And as you eat, the light shifts. It settles low against the floorboards, it curls in the corners, it kisses the shoulders of every object you love. And then, in that hushed breath between one moment and the next, a small thought rises like a wick touched by fire. If this stillness has found a place in you, if these chapters have wrapped around your thoughts like soft wool or the scent of beeswax, consider lighting a small fire of your own. Share it. Subscribe, so that others, wandering in the dusk, might find their way to this quiet flame. You let the thought rest on your breath, then rise. You collect the bundles you prepared, step into your coat, and carry the light out into the deepening evening. not to chase away the dark, but to offer it company. The sky is a slate gray when you step outside. It isn't quite raining, but the air feels heavy, as if the clouds are thinking about it, gathering their breath, holding it. The streets are quiet, save for the slow clop of hooves in the distance and the whisper of leaves shuffling along the gutters. You carry the small bundle of candles in your coat pocket, their warmth tucked close to your side. You walk without direction, not because you're lost, but because sometimes it's good to let the city lead. Your boots trace a path through familiar alleys and lesser-known lanes, where ivy still clings to brick and children's chalk drawings linger beneath windows. Eventually, your feet bring you to the river. The Seine stretches wide and glassy before you, its surface gently rippling beneath the weight of dusk. On the opposite bank, lamplighters climb their ladders, kindling soft glows into the thickening air. One by one, the lanterns bloom, quiet, golden flames reaching into the coming dark. You watch for a long time. There's a rhythm in their movement. Strike, spark, flame. Step, strike again. It reminds you of your own work, the patience, the silence, the small satisfaction of flame taking hold. It is an act of hope, in its own way, lighting what cannot light itself. A boy near the edge of the quay is building something from driftwood. His hands move with confidence, fitting sticks together, tying them with bits of thread and wire. You watch him from a short distance. He doesn't notice. After a while, he places a candle at the center of his small creation, a boat of sorts, a raft with no mast, no sail, just the promise of drifting. He lights it, and the little flame dances in the growing wind. Then, with the care of someone placing a wish into the world, he sets it on the water. It floats gently. The flame doesn't falter. You don't ask who he is. You don't need to. You simply reach into your pocket and unwrap the smallest of your own candles, the one meant for no one. You strike your match and offer the light. The boy takes it without a word. A moment later, a second raft floats beside the first. 2 lights now, wandering side by side. You watch until they disappear around the bend. The boy stands quietly, eyes on the water, then turns and walks away without looking back. You linger. The stones beneath your feet are damp. A curl of fog rises from the river, catching the golden light of the lanterns along the opposite bank. You imagine the city breathing, slow, even, steady, preparing for whatever tomorrow might ask. And for a moment, you let go of everything you think you need to hold. You become one with the evening, one with the silence, one with the drift. You reach into your coat again and retrieve the final bundle, the one wrapped in green twine. You walk until you find a stoop that feels right, a wooden door with chip and paint, a potted basil plant on the step, no name carved into the stone, but you recognize it all the same. You leave the bundle there, quietly. The gift is its own purpose. As you make your way home, the air cools further. The clouds finally exhale. A soft drizzle begins, not enough to chase you indoors, but enough to soak the edges of your sleeves and scent the air with petrichor. You like the rain. It makes the city softer, rounder, as if Paris herself sighs in relief. When you reach your door, your candle in the window is still burning. You smile at it, a small bow of gratitude. Inside, your workshop is dim but warm. The wax you poured earlier has cooled perfectly, the tapers smooth and flawless, their scent filling the air with quiet sweetness. You strike a match. You light the candle. Madame Fournier left you. Tonight feels right. Not long, not sorrowful, but meaningful. The flame catches instantly, steady, bright, serene. The cedar and rose rise like a memory unfolding. It smells like mornings in her garden, like afternoons of shared silence and evenings of shared wonder. You sit beside it with a notebook. You do not write a letter this time. You write a list. A flame carried to the river, a stranger's letter of gratitude, a boy with a raft and no name, the scent of rose, finally remembered, a day shaped like breath. You close the book and rest your palm over it. There is something sacred about this stillness, not holy, not divine, just deeply human. Your candle burns low now. You do not trim it. You let it curl and flicker, wild in its last stretch of life. It dances across the walls like a memory too large for the page. And from somewhere deep within, perhaps the flame itself, perhaps only your thoughts, this final reflection emerges. If this quiet journey has made your evening softer, if these drifting lights have stayed with you for a while, you can pass them onward. A like, a comment, a share set gently upon the river of the world. You smile. Not for anyone, just for yourself. And you sit in the stillness, in the light, in the warmth of a world that, for this one quiet moment, asks nothing of you but to be. It begins with a breath, not yours at first. The wind. It finds its way through the narrow street like a ribbon, curling softly between shutters and under door frames, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke, damp stone, and the sharp mineral tang of the river at low tide. It slips beneath your door, too, and lifts the edge of a folded scrap of paper that had long since come to rest beside your hearth. You do not move immediately. You sit quiet, watching how that single corner flutters in rhythm with the breeze. The candle. Madame Fournier left you is now no more than a stubbit's wax pooled and cooled into a delicate dish of amber. You do not feel sadness at its end. You feel gratitude. Every flame, like every day, eventually draws itself into stillness. And stillness is not an ending. It's a kind of homecoming. You rise slowly, joints creaking gently as they adjust to the cool of morning. The coals in the stove are still faintly warm. You add a few pieces of wood and wait for the fire to take again. It does, shyly at first, then with more confidence, until the small room is filled with that familiar hush of heat rising. You place the kettle on. Today, you decide, will be the final pour. Not forever, not entirely, but for now. Something in your chest tells you it's time, that this chapter is ready to close with a reverence, that these hands, so long familiar with wax and wick and soot, might rest a while before beginning again. You dress with care. The same apron you wore on the very first day, years ago, it no longer fits the same way. The fabric is thinner in places, the threadbare corners mended and remended. But it feels like armor, soft and familiar. The molds are clean, arranged neatly on the counter. The tools rest in their place, still marked with the oils of 100 quiet evenings. You choose the tall tapers, the ones that take longer to cool, but burn with such grace. The scent for today is lavender and honeycomb, a closing note. A warmth that hums rather than sings. You stir the wax slowly, eyes half-lidded, listening to the way it folds over itself in the copper pot. The room is full of silence, but not emptiness. It is a silence made of presence, memory, breath. Outside, the bells chime once. You do not count them today. The number no longer matters. Time no longer presses. You pour with both hands as if offering something not just to the molds, but to the space around you, to the shelves, the walls, the beams overhead. Each pour is slower than the last, more deliberate, not because you fear mistake, but because you are savoring the rhythm, letting it settle into your bones. While the candles cool, you write again, not in the notebook this time, on a single slip of paper. You write only a sentence. I was here, and I lit the dark. You fold the paper and tuck it gently into the small drawer beneath the counter, the drawer where you've placed so many forgotten things. A pressed flower, a broken matchstick, the tag from the first order you ever sent. You do not close the drawer fully. You leave it slightly open. An invitation. You sit at your workbench and wait. The candles cool in the hush of afternoon. You do not rush them. You do not distract yourself. You simply sit, one hand wrapped around your mug, the other resting open on your lap. Your breath moves in and out like tide water, unforced, slow, whole. And then the bell above the door rings. You blink. For a moment, you wonder if you imagined it. But no, the door creaks open, just a sliver. A figure steps in, cloaked, hood pulled low. No sound but the shift of boots on wood. You do not speak, you wait. They pull back the hood, and you recognize the face. Not a customer, not a stranger, but someone who once shared the same apprenticeship as you years ago, before time turned both of you into echoes of who you used to be. Their eyes are the same. Tired, soft, awake, they say nothing, but they look around the room, at the shelves, at the candle stubs, at the note you left on the table without meaning to. They smile, and in that smile, something unspoken passes between you. A confirmation, a closing. You rise and place one of the newly cooled candles into their hand. You do not wrap it, do not tie it, just wax and wick and warmth. They nod once, then leave. You are alone again, but it no longer feels like solitude. The sun has dropped below the rooftops now. Long shadows stretch across the floor, warm and blue, like velvet. You light one of the lavender candles and place it in the center of the room. Its light is not bright, not urgent, just gentle. You watch it flicker, and for a long time you think of nothing, no future, no past, only this moment, shaped by wax and breath and fire. You take one last walk through the room, your fingers trailing across the shelves, the brushes, the etched glass, the pots with dried herbs hanging overhead. Each item knows you. Each item carries a piece of you. You open the windows. The night air is crisp but not cold. The scent of ivy and chimney smoke curls into the room. A cat pads silently across the cobblestone outside, pausing to glance at the flicker in your window. You light a second candle and place it beside the first, then a third, a fourth, until the whole room glows like memory come alive. And in the hush between one flicker and the next, you think, this is what it means to end something without losing it, to let go and still carry. You sit in the center of your light, and for a long while, you simply breathe. The candles have all burned low, not extinguished in haste, not forgotten in corners, but burned fully and truly until the flame bowed in silence and the wick curled in sleep. You lie in your bed now, the covers pulled gently over your shoulders, the scent of wax still clinging to the air, warm and quiet. Outside, the world continues. Somewhere, horses pull carts down narrow streets. Somewhere, rain begins to tap softly against glass. Somewhere, a bell tolls a time you no longer need to know. But here, in this room, this small workshop of memory and patience and flame, everything is still. Everything is safe. Your hands, once busy with wick and mold and copper pot, now rest loosely by your side. Your breath has slowed like the tide at its gentlest point, just before it returns to the sea. You think, for a moment, of every candle you ever made, each one a thread of light sent out into the dark, into the homes and hearts of others. You'll never know where they all ended up. You'll never know which ones lit births or dinners or morning tables, which ones watched over sleep or burned beside stories whispered in the night. But you do know this, the flame never stays. It travels, and so do you. You are not just the hands that poured, you are the light that kept going. You are the warmth left behind in the room long after the door has closed, so now you may rest. There is no more to be done. You've poured your final candle. You've left your final flame. And somewhere out there, someone lights one now because of you. So let your eyes drift closed. Let your breath settle. Let the warmth of memory cradle your bones like soft linen. The world is still turning. But you may sleep. Sleep, gentle keeper of flame. Sleep.